Hi everyone, this is the BlindSpot team, and today we're going to be giving you our demo, showing you our process, and just overall updating you guys on what we've been working on for the quarter. So our application is a calendar application that helps individuals tackle the small chores that throw out their schedules. We call these small chores microtasks. They can be things like laundry or throwing out the trash or exercise, right? Things that are really important for our day, but because they're smaller, we tend to overlook scheduling them. And at the end of the day, when you're trying to get everything done, we can feel very crunched for time or like we weren't productive enough and things like that. So our application gives you an intelligent suggestion on how you can fit these microtasks within your day. The four main things that we look for in this application is major activity tracking. So making sure that we're working around the important things you have for any day, syncing with the native calendars, giving the intelligent microtask suggestions, so recommending time for where they can go into your day, and finally, productivity insights, so understanding how this is helping your time management, if you're feeling less stressed during the day, and just helping us overall give you more accurate suggestions. Now going into some of the technologies that we used. So React Native is where we built the application and helped us build the cross-platform mobile app. JS was used for the app's logic, the UI, any interactions. GitHub was really good for managing the versions of our code, good collaboration and deployment. We started using PRs, which is more of an industry standard, I think. So it was nice to get some exposure to that. Firebase helped us handle our user authentication, login, and stored our database. We used Expo for the development and testing process, and that's where we hosted and ran and tested the application. Jira was good for keeping track of what needed to be done, what each person was doing, and how that impacted our final goal. And finally, we used the OpenAI's ChatGPT API, and we used this to get the intelligent suggestions on the microtasks. Some of the information we gave was the user's current events, what tasks they wanted to improve on, how long it had taken them based on the recommendation we gave. So the goal here with the intelligent LLM was to have as individualized of a recommendation as possible. The first thing we did is unit testing, which is making sure that every individual component works on its own. End-to-end testing and regression testing kind of went hand in hand because every time we would add a new component to make sure that the rest of the application was still working correctly, we would run the app on Expo and also simultaneously test the user experience, so looking at it end-to-end. We used A/B testing, which is important for helping us decide which features to put in, because we were bouncing around a lot of ideas and we wanted to see which was the most cohesive set of features that would be easy for the user to pick up on. As for future proofing, we made sure to have clean coding principles, so dependency injection, separation of components. We avoided any kind of fragile test dependencies, so no specific hard-coded values. We weren't relying on the UI layout. It really relied on our communication with the database. And finally, we consistently added to our test case, and we made sure that they were as comprehensive as possible, and they were constantly updated for our use case. For version controlling, we used GitHub, and continuous integration meant having the unit and integration tests run on every single commit or every single component that we were adding. Continuous development was building the application and going through that list of user benchmarks to make sure that the application was as easy as possible for the user. And in the future, if we were to deploy this application, we would probably use Docker for containerizing the app, and that would help this pipeline a lot as well.
Application landscape pattern, we chose a microservice pattern, where each service handles distinct aspects of BlindSpot's implementation. For example, we use ChatGPT's API and Expo Calendar's API to integrate user calendar data seamlessly. We selected this approach because it enables flexibility and scalability, allowing us to expand services as needed. The microservice design is fault tolerant, allowing for BlindSpot to still function even if ChatGPT API calls are not working, for example. For our application structure, we chose a layered structure. The layered structure allows us to logically separate the concerns of the system. This approach allows us to maintain a clear flow of data from the user interface all the way down to the database. Data is inputted via the user interface and then flows down to the application layer of BlindSpot that can then use different API calls to move data down to the persistence, business, and database layer. For our user interface, we had model, view model pattern to effectively separate the app's data from its user interface. The model acts as a mediator, managing the interactions between the model and the view. So whenever a user updates their calendar, the view model is responsible for noticing that, updating the model, and then updating the view accordingly. For some of our design choices, we used a proxy pattern. The proxy pattern helped simplify ChatGPT calls by abstracting the complexity of the external service call. By using the proxy, we
Now going into retrospection. So we met about twice a week, and in these meetings we combined backlog refinement and stand-up. And so we would give updates on the stories that we were working on currently, and then any changes we wanted to make to the upcoming sprint. We kept the story estimation flexible because it was our first time working as a team, so understanding how much time it would take to finish a story or one story point, we had to figure that out together. For contributions, Sacaar and Ben worked on the front-end development, so UI, UX, and a lot of what you see in the application. Rishi and I worked on the back end, so we were working with the database and LLM queries. And Grant did API integration, so like what you see with the native calendar pulling and things like that. We did a total of 29 stories across 3 sprints, and we averaged about 1 day per story point. So this is what took some time to figure out as a team. The first sprint was all about the front end, getting everything set up as static pages, and then just creating or formatting the database. Second sprint was about making sure that the information in the database had a certain format. It was quality data, and then making sure that the front end was working with that. And the last sprint was integrating everything together and making sure that the native calendar along with LLM queries were working. And some of the key things that we took away from this project was we really leaned into communication during this process because each of our components are so tightly, they need to be seamlessly integrated to have a good user experience. So we were always talking about any issues that were coming up, changes in data formatting, all of that. And that was what allowed each of our commits and our contributions to have value without having to go back and redo work. In the future, we'd like to lean in more to the intelligent aspect of this application. So using the LLM to understand underlying patterns or seeing if we can identify disruptions in someone's day and how we can best help them overcome these things to have a productive day. We're really proud of our work for this quarter, and thank you so much for listening.